Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, both our residents and also our partners. I'm Ross Dickman, the Vice President of Operations. I'm here today to talk to you about hurricane season 2021. We address this each and every year just prior to hurricane season. This is one of those videos that is worth watching just to make sure that each of us is prepared for what may be coming upon us in hurricane season from June 1st all the way to November 30th. The most intense storms for hurricanes each year typically occur somewhere between September, the very beginning of September, and the end of October. But that's not to say that the intensity of storms cannot occur sooner, or it cannot occur after the end of October into the month of November. I'm just simply stating that historically, the greatest storms have occurred in that time frame. This slide right here shows you some weather tracks or hurricane tracks from 2020. The 20 season was somewhat overshadowed by COVID-19. It's probably good that that occurred simply because we didn't need the additional stress in our lives. But as you can see that from this particular map right here of the Atlantic, there was plenty of activity of storms coming across from the west coast of Africa, which is where most of these storms are generated, not all, but most of them. These occur from unstable air masses, and then they continue to work their way across the Atlantic Ocean, building up momentum through heat and ultimately landing often somewhere in North America. And the, of course, south coast of Florida is a very common target, also the Gulf of Mexico, and working its way up into the mid-Atlantic region as well. The next slide is just a reminder of the different categories of hurricanes, 1 through 5. The category 1, 74 to 95 miles per hour, would seem to be the least concern for us, but actually water is what is most damaging in a hurricane scenario. It's not the wind. And we've had some serious hurricanes that have caused hundreds of millions of dollars of damage, billions of dollars of damage, just from water alone by a rise in the sea level and a tidal surge coming in. So even though it's a category 1 or a lower category, 1 or 2, we should not become comfortable thinking that that is far less dangerous to us. There are a number of other elements that determine whether a hurricane is going to be serious and whether it's going to be potentially damaging for our geographic region. Of course, the highest level of a hurricane is a category 5, and that is a category that indicates the wind speed exceeds 155 miles per hour, which is extremely damaging, destructive. Hurricanes in the northern hemisphere create the greatest danger to us in the what's called the northeast quadrant. If you essentially divide or break up a hurricane in 4 quadrants, the northeast quadrant would be the most damaging, and that's because of the directional spin in the northern hemisphere, and that creates the highest wind velocity and damage. The reason why this is relative in this discussion is because often this will help determine the National Hurricane Center, the meteorologists, in giving recommendations on whether to evacuate an area or not. We are required, in the business that we serve here at Moorings Park Institute, we are required to develop, maintain, and exercise a comprehensive emergency management plan, not only for hurricanes, but hurricanes are inclusive of that plan, but for any emergency. Again, the largest section of that plan, though, does refer to inclement weather and predominantly for hurricanes. So this plan, it goes into great detail of responsibilities, actionable steps to take in the event of an oncoming, a forecasted hurricane in our area, resources that are made available, decision-making tools, and then also what would be commonly called recovery decision-making and tools. So what happens after the storm? How do you essentially regain normal living conditions in an environment that's been devastated? This plan is reviewed by the Emergency Management Office of Collier County annually. Each of our communities has one. They're required to have one. They look very similar, and because we are part of an obligated group, meaning that we all fall under one organization, most of those plans look almost identical. And then if you go into it a little further and you start looking at details, you'll notice that there are differences on what steps are taken. And that's because the communities are built differently. The flow of traffic would be different if we had to evacuate. The amount of water we store, where we put our additional food and so forth, it's different. And of course, staffing is different at each community. So the executive directors hold full responsibility for writing, maintaining, and updating this document, and then also making sure that the county approves it, takes a good close look at it, and approves it every single year. There are 4 phases that we use at Moorings Park as far as predicting and then actually preparing for hurricanes. The first phase is what I'm here to talk about today, and that's just essentially the seasonal alert. As I spoke just a moment ago, the season starts on June 1st. Today is the 18th of May as we're doing this video. So June 1st is right around the corner, and then the season will run all the way through the end of November. That's not to say that there has not been historically hurricanes that have occurred prior to June 1st. There has been a number of them. As a matter of fact, the Pacific this year, the Pacific Ocean in 2021 has already seen some severe weather prior to the beginning of hurricane season. And then that season concludes on November 30th, and it's not to say that you can't have a hurricane after November 30th. This has also happened in history. But again, the highest probability is June 1st to November 30th, with the greatest threat the beginning of September, probably through the end of October. Phase 2 is what we call a hurricane watch. A watch utilizes the operative word may. In other words, a hurricane may affect our area in the next 48 to 72 hours. So this is going to be based on, obviously, weather experts, meteorologists, most often reporting from the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. We have direct real-time data from them. We stay on top of that, and that's how we can make the best decisions for Moorings Park Institute. If in fact there is a hurricane that is proceeding toward our area and the breadth of the storm would appear to be able to negatively affect us, then we will want to be vigilant to look for a hurricane watch. These watches are set by the National Hurricane Center, and then they're repeated by local weather channels in our area. So news in Naples, Wink News locally between Fort Myers and down here in Naples would have this up on their screen on a regular basis throughout the day, evening, night, just to remind people that we're under a watch. The other one could be a warning. Unlike a watch, a warning is a different definition. The definition is it is expected to actually hit our area, and that would be in the 36-hour range. These are critical time frames because this allows us to make preparations to either shelter in place or to leave the area if it absolutely is going to be a destructive hurricane. The last phase, I'm going to go back one slide here again. So phase 3 would be 36 hours out, a hurricane warning. Again, a warning would be identified in red on the map, and this is expected to occur. Okay, it's no longer may occur; it's expected to occur. And then the hurricane strike itself. Okay, that is the phase 4. So that's expected to not only hit us in 36 hours, but now it does proceed into a direct contact to shore. There's only really 2 possibilities of what we would do at Moorings Park. And when I talk about Moorings Park, I'm talking about the Institute, all 3 communities. There's really only 2 possibilities of what action we would take, what overarching action. One would be we're going to stay right here, meaning in Naples, at the communities. And the other one would be that we're going to evacuate the area. So remaining here in the area would depend on a number of factors. I won't be able to list every single one of them, but most of them would revolve around the intensity of the storm, the direction the storm is coming from, the amount of water it's bringing with it, also whether it's going to hit land during flood or ebb tide, how much water it's going to push into the coastal region. These are all factors that are considered when we look at sheltering in place or departing the area. Moorings Park, after Hurricane Irma in 2017, Moorings Park made a major investment in hurricane preparedness. And that investment was in generators and a number of other areas. Certainly, we made an investment in generators so that we could keep the Orchid Terrace, the Oakstone community, the Oakstone Assisted Living and Mangrove over at Gray Oaks, and then also Chateau on the original campus, completely air-conditioned throughout the entire storm and post-storm. In the past, we've been able to condition certain areas of the buildings, but never all of it. And there was a very unfortunate experience that occurred in southeast Florida, in the Miami-Dade area, in 2017 that resulted in a number of lost lives in a senior retirement community. The governor, moving forward from that point, instituted an action that required all communities to have a minimum standard to maintain temperature control in their buildings. We have done that. We made a major investment, and we have actually exceeded the requirements and expectations on both of our campuses, and even our third campus that's being constructed right now. It's partially opened, it's Grand Lake. It too has these additional benefits woven into the construction of the community. I mentioned earlier about the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan just a moment ago. That plan helps the Chief Executive Officer, Dan Lavender, ultimately make a decision whether to stay and shelter in place or leave. There are instances where the governor or a city or local official can make that call, and then we need to comply with that. It all depends on which leadership is going to make that decision and when they're going to make it, and then we'll follow through with that. Again, I want to stress there's a number of decisions that must be made. There's a litany of material that has to be studied. We're talking to a lot of people. We're talking to the Emergency Management Office. Most of the time, FEMA would have been stood up. We're using each of these resources as a valuable tool to make the best decision. There are some special responsibilities for our partners as well. I'm doing this video for the benefit of both our residents and our partners, but this particular slide addresses our partners. Each department head throughout our communities does have a responsibility to prepare their department for the storm. And preparation not only includes right here on the campus or their campus, but it also means educating their staff and making sure that they are keenly aware of the requirements that they must meet, both as a partner of Moorings Park, as a company, and then also the information that each of those partners needs for their personal families and their property at home, how to prepare and manage that in the event of an oncoming storm. The Vice President of Operations during a named storm will work directly with Collier County and determine the need to implement any particular component of the emergency management plan. So in many cases, I would make sure that the county is aware of what our plan of action is and receive their guidance and input, and then, of course, I would make sure that the CEO is well informed so that he can make the best decision, which is bullet number 3. Sheltering. I will share with you that while we don't know the characteristics of any future storm, the probability of us actually evacuating, other than if we are directed to by a state or local official, would be probably pretty rare. Sheltering would be the most common actionable step that you would see. And in this particular case, we would recall our partners, bring them all back to their campuses. We would provide direction and guidance to our residents and our partners. And then also, with all of our partners, we divide up into 2 teams, and this is for each campus again, a red team and a blue team. We'd provide continuous updated information. We would make sure as we get closer to the hurricane, making contact with land or landfall, we would make sure that we secure everything that could become a missile hazard, anything that could fly and cause destruction. We would walk our exteriors of our buildings, make sure everything fully functions, doors closed, doors lock. Cars and golf carts would be placed in as many garages as we have available, or any covered parking. All the generators we have would be pre-tested. We'd make sure that all of our fuel tanks are 100% topped off. And also all of the windows are fully functional. In other words, we can close them, we can lock them. We also check a number of these at the very beginning of hurricane season or just prior to hurricane season as of now, so that we don't find a discrepancy that occurs after a named storm has been determined to be heading our way. So that's sheltering right there. A few other things for sheltering at our communities. All independent apartment homes do have generators. Now, those generators are limited in capacity, so they'll take care of emergency lighting. They'll take care of an additional convenience outlet, a 110 volt AC outlet. There will be power to your refrigerator, and there will be power to elevators. One other thing that isn't up there is there'll be power to emergency lighting. Okay. Now, for independent living homes, throughout all 3 campuses, the generators do not power air conditioning. There is one exception to that, and that's at Gray Oaks, because at Gray Oaks, we do have some homes that are located in Grand Place, and the cooling tower has that capability. All healthcare areas, Orchid Terrace, Oakstone, Mangrove, Chateau, they have even more capability, and that's because of regulatory requirements. First of all, they have to have a minimum of 96 hours of run time on their generators. They do provide full refrigeration, emergency lighting, electricity. There are certain elevators that function, not all of them. They draw a lot of amperage, and then also air conditioning. And that's air conditioning throughout all of those 4 locations. So we talked about sheltering. Now let me talk momentarily about evacuation. So as you can see on this particular slide, evacuation, if it is ordered, it's not an option. The state and local officials, particularly first responders, will not jeopardize their own safety for others if we are told we must evacuate. So they're not going to respond to a local area that has been told to evacuate. If a storm hits that area, causes great damage and puts people in need, they have in the past gone on record, and they'll continue to do this, that they don't want to and will not jeopardize their own safety for their first responders. The decision to leave an area, evacuate, based on zones, comes with the full authority of the governor of the state of Florida. So even though the order might be given by a mayor, even though the order might be given by a city official, it comes with the full power and authority of the governor. If we do evacuate, and I stress if, because this would be unusual, but if we did, all of our assisted living and memory care residents would move together, including skilled nursing. So they would, in other words, mobilize logistically all at one time. We wouldn't just mobilize the original campus and then Gray Oaks, Mornings Park at Gray Oaks would mobilize on their own. We would look upon that as one large mobilization of all of those residents that have special needs. They may have, in most cases, they have limited ambulation. They do need extra care. So we would not only be mobilizing the residents, but we would also be moving caregivers, medication carts, all types of products to take care of their needs wherever the destination is. We will assist our residents with evacuation by arranging for lodging. So this is independent living now on all of our campuses. So we'll go ahead and identify lodging locations if we had to evacuate and it was required. We'll find that location. We have a few places in the state of Florida. We prepare for this each and every year. We have large hotels that we usually set up arrangements with, and those become our primary and secondary and tertiary locations. Of course, the thing that we don't know every year is what location does a storm approach us from, and that can have a lot to do with where are we going to go in the event that we are forced to evacuate. So we have a few locations in the state of Florida that include the Southeast, it includes Central Florida, it also includes Northern Florida, and also the Panhandle. And then again, the last bullet down there talks about evacuation will require essential personnel. So we would send a large group of our partners with the buses out of town and proceeding to their destination. This would be important. We had done this after the storm hit Hurricane Irma in 2017. We didn't do it prior to, we did it after, particularly for the residents who were in Towers A and Tower G. If we had to do something like this, if this was necessary, we would certainly try to calm everyone, and by doing that, we would make sure that family members were kept well aware of their loved ones in assisted living or memory care. We also would post all information on in-house television. We would do any type of community posting that we could. We'll put it on the website. We'll also use Informacast. Informacast, of course, is the program that we use most often. We've used Informacast throughout the entire COVID-19 pandemic to get information to our residents and our partners. It worked really well. We would expect it to work just as well during a hurricane or the onset of a hurricane. Receiving facilities, we have pre-arrangements not only with hotels, but we also have pre-arrangements with other assisted living and nursing facilities. This is a requirement by our assisted living administrators, and we update that information every single year. So these are essentially agreements between two or more organizations that they agree to accept our residents and our staff at their location under emergency conditions. Transportation, motor coaches, I believe the passenger side is anywhere from 55 to 60, perhaps slightly over 60. These are relatively new, beautiful motor coaches, all supplied by NTT Transportation in Naples. Once we notify them that we are going to mobilize, that we have a required evacuation to meet, we will coordinate with them on the number of buses and the time to load. And then that starts the entire process of getting everybody to pack bags and to prepare to move out of town. Transportation is provided for all of our assisted living and memory care, and certainly we would take care of any nursing residents we could. Some nursing residents may also be required to stay at the local hospital depending on their acuity, their health, depending on their health level, their acuity level, and the complications they may have. We'll also provide transportation to our independent living residents if the evacuation is truly ordered. If the evacuation is not ordered, then we will assist you every bit, as much as we can. However, if you are the one who is making the decision to actually evacuate before it is mandatory would be the state, the local, or even our CEO, then we'll assist you to the best of our ability to help find lodging for you and even provide you with the latest traffic updates in case you're going to drive, or assist you with air travel. However, we won't be providing any transportation. Transportation is covered only if we are ordered to leave the area. I just want to go over a couple of actions that are necessary for our partners specifically. In the case of department heads, those who oversee entire departments, they need to make sure that their partners are well versed on the red and the blue teams. We break up all of our partners between red and blue. The red team is the group that is here just prior to a hurricane. They continue to remain on site on the campus to provide full support and services to our residents throughout the storm. And then the red team will continue to remain on site for a brief period of time after the weather subsides. The blue team, their purpose is to come in and relieve the red team and allow them to have rest and downtime. So they become essentially the reinforcements that come in so that we can continue services and support to our residents throughout the entire hurricane devastation period. Our partners must keep their telephone numbers up to date with us through our Human Resources Information System, ADP. We require that they keep their telephone and their mobile number particularly, and also their home address current with us. If they change that telephone number, or they no longer carry a telephone number, then we need to know that, and also if they change addresses. For residents, if you change your telephone number or you obtain a mobile number and we don't have it, then I would encourage you to call my office in operations, and we'll make sure that we register that telephone number. The reason why this is critical is because when we send out the Informacast alert messages, that automatically goes out to every single mobile telephone number that we have registered. And that applies to both residents and it applies to our partners. We encourage our partners to review a personal hurricane plan with their families every single year. And that plan can be comprehensive or it can be relatively brief. However, they need to have a plan. And I would also encourage all of our residents to have a plan. There is paperwork and a form that we ask you to fill out each year, and it's just recently gone out, where you fill it out, and we ask you questions on that plan. For instance, do you intend to stay with the community? Do you intend to leave? There are a number of questions about your capability. I think there's even a question in there about pets. So there's a number of questions that we need for you to answer, and this helps us determine how many vehicles we're going to need in the event of a forced evacuation. But it also gives us a good sense of the level of support that we're going to need to provide our residents if we're going to shelter in place, or how many residents plan on leaving on buses and how we're going to support that as well. I would encourage you to always keep your telephone on throughout hurricane season, June 1st to November 30th. You can keep it charged, keep it turned on. Informacast messages can come out at any hour of the day. If you shut off your phone, you're not going to get Informacast messages. So please keep your phone active, and you'll get all of the information. We try not to send out general information on storms. We try to save Informacast messages to truly what we call emergent information, information that you need to know. You need to be prepared in the event that this storm continues on its current track. It's going to be a problem, or it actually could be a devastating experience, and you have to be made aware of that, and to do that, you have to keep your phone on. I would also add one last point there, and that is during hurricane season, please keep yourself aware of all weather activity that's going on. It doesn't take too long for these storms to develop off the west coast of Africa, and usually within 7 or 8 or 9 days, they're across the ocean, and they're starting to bear down on the state of Florida. Organizational management is pretty straightforward. The CEO is the person who's ultimately responsible. He has absolute responsibility for the entire institute, and that's Dan Lavender. And then all operational related matters fall to myself, and then Diana Bailey, of course, is healthcare. Human resources, we currently have Mary Kolosh, and Jonathan is also working out of human resources. They're available. Tom Mann in sales and marketing, and then Mary Morton as our CFO. And you can just see the waterfall effect, or the cascading of duties and responsibilities with this organizational chart. Very similar to what our typical org chart looks like. What this does is it shows responsibilities for hurricane activity, decision-making, responsibilities for each individual. I spoke a moment ago about Informacast. It's a software program that blasts out information. It's tied to mobile telephone numbers. You can receive it via text. You can receive it via a message, a voice message. Originally designed in the state of California for wildfires, it took off throughout the country as a highly successful program to get information, time-sensitive information, out to everyone. So I would encourage you to make sure you have a phone of some type. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. A flip phone works with Informacast, but have some mobile device for making phone calls and receiving text messages. And this is so critical, particularly in living in South Florida, either southwest or southeast. This is a slide that most of us are intimately familiar with. We see it year in and year out. Basic things that we should have. Incidentally, I encourage all of our residents and family members and also our partners just to have this available in your home. Take a look at it periodically throughout hurricane season. These are the fundamentals you should be able to have. If you did have to evacuate, you want to make sure you have a supply of medications. You want to make sure you have some of these fundamental issues right here taken care of, whether it is bottled water, medications, a pillow, reading material, eyeglasses, and so forth. You'll notice that cash is up there as well, first aid kit, and so forth. And you can essentially prioritize what is most important on this list. Its sole purpose is nothing more than to reacquaint you with hurricane preparedness and starting to think about what would I do if. I started this briefing by indicating that the hurricane season starts on June 1st and ends on the 30th, but I also made a note earlier that we can have activity prior to June 1st, and if you look up here, you can see that on the 9th of May, we already had Tropical Storm Andres, which is the earliest storm to develop in the Eastern Pacific. So it gives you some indication that we can't always go by the general rule of June 1st to November 30th. For 2021, for this operating year, the National Hurricane Center out of Coral Gables does predict 20 named storms. 9 of those are expected to be hurricanes. And then 4 of those are expected to be major hurricanes. So major hurricane would be category 3 or higher. And that would be an active hurricane season. Certainly we all hope and pray for a calm season, but we need to be prepared just in case it is not. COVID-19 is not of the past yet, but we are making great strides. There aren't that many places left anymore that are requiring masks, certainly in restaurants and other public settings, providing that you have been fully inoculated. But if we had to shelter, or we had a lot of people in one common area, or we had a mix of people, which we didn't have extensive knowledge whether people were vaccinated or not, in that particular case, we probably would implement a higher level of safety. So we can't get overly comfortable thinking that COVID-19 for 2021 would not play a role here. It most likely would. So when it comes to this particular season, Moorings Park will assist partners on the red team with providing shelter. That means that those who are here prior to the storm, during the storm, and immediately after will take care of their needs for a place to rest and to be able to eat on each of the campuses. We'll take care of those needs. We do not anticipate having the ability to take care of immediate family members. Our campuses do not have the capacity to take that responsibility on. So another reason why our partners need to be prepared and have a family meeting to discuss what they're going to do in the event of a storm. Local hotels would most likely be the best place to take care of their needs. We also, in the past, have seen family and friends go to shelters such as high school gymnasiums, auditoriums, arenas, and so forth. And then we do anticipate supporting a large number of residents as we have been in previous hurricane seasons. So, this year alone, we have seen very few residents, very small percentage, leave after Mother's Day to head north to a secondary home, which means essentially we're going to have very full campuses during hurricane season 2021. This requires us to be prepared for larger capacity of transportation. If we did have to evacuate, if we had to evacuate more hotel rooms, and on and on. So, as we look at the number of people who have left the area or are anticipating leaving the area and heading north, it's far less than we've seen in the past. Perhaps not a surprise, only because we are still stepping out of a pandemic and there are some concerns about the health and safety for travel. Final thoughts. I do want to remind everyone that the executive directors with their department heads, but particularly the executive directors, will provide further detail and discuss those details with you about hurricane preparedness at your community. That's their role, that's their job. They know it better than anyone else, and they're prepared to do it. I've already talked to each and every one of them. We'll continue to monitor the advancements with COVID-19 precautions. As I've indicated just a moment ago, great strides have been made to relax a lot of the restrictions, but in a scenario where we have an enormous number of people living in a tight, sheltered environment, that may change our approach on precautionary measures. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that we're required to do 2 drills a year by the state of Florida, and also that's echoed through the Emergency Management Office of Collier County. One of those drills is called a desk review, so it's essentially an administrative review that I conduct with our senior staff. The second is a full-blown mobilization drill, and that's a drill where we actually have the buses come from NTT in Naples. They drive up. We load out a portion of the equipment we would normally take with us if we had to evacuate. We prepare everything. We have normal reporting. Checklists are completed. Everything is handled and processed as if it was a real hurricane. We would receive reports that the fuel tanks are topped off, generators have been tested, all loose objects have been tied down on campuses, all doors have been checked, all windows have been checked. We have a full accounting of all residents. We have a full week or more of food and water supplies, and the list goes on and on. Very comprehensive. We actually do that full mobilization drill usually in the June, July timeframe. It takes all day to accomplish, but it's very important that we do it, and it gets everybody into the mindset that we're dealing with something very serious. A couple of quick photos right there, just to remind everybody that we really could face some very serious weather in 2021. Hurricane Sally in 2020. As you may remember, Louisiana really took the brunt of the hurricane season in the continental United States for 2020. Hurricane Eta. There's our hurricane in 2017. It was a devastating hurricane. I got up to, prior to even making landfall, even getting near the Keys, got up to Category 5 status, and then de-escalated down to a Category 4 and ultimately a 3 when it hit land here in Collier County, and actually Marco Island. But a devastating hurricane nonetheless, and it took us quite a while to recover from that, as most of you who were here remember. Hurricane Charley in 2004, some of you were here to see that, also an extremely devastating storm. Andrew, I remember Andrew quite well in '92, arguably one of the most devastating storms in American history. It was expected to hit around Fort Lauderdale, actually in the 11th hour, made a hard left turn, came further south on the Florida Peninsula, went south of the southernmost edge of Dade County into Homestead, Florida, and cut a clear path across. So just took out everything in its path. Winds in excess of 175 miles an hour, continuous winds. We don't know what type of activity we're going to have. We have a lot of powerful-minded scientists that work for the National Hurricane Center. But in the final analysis, it really is forecasting. It's taking the best guess based on all of the information that we have. It's not a promise. So we just need to be prepared. And then that leaves the question to you. Are you prepared, and is your family prepared? So I'll leave it at that. I know it's been a long presentation, but it's an important one. Contact your executive director if you have questions, and hope that we have a calm season. Thank you.